My name is James Marr. I'm a software engineer at N3TWORK Studios. I live in San Francisco, California, in the Mission District. As a software engineer, I primarily work in the Unity 3D game engine, building really cool features for people to play. 3D things, 2D things, animated characters, menus, transitions. I got into game development when I was about 12 years old. My mom was at a yard sale and she saw a big, thick book called Teach Yourself C++ in 30 Days. I picked that up and I taught myself C++, and pretty soon I was starting to build my own games. Started out with simple 2D stuff and ended up building my own 3D game engine. I went to University of Oregon studying computer science, and I got a dual major in physics. Physics has ended up being incredibly useful in game development. I thought that physics would teach me about motion and collision and things like that. But what physics really taught me was to be unafraid of math, no matter how dense or how incomprehensible it was. Turns out game development has a lot of math in it, from linear algebra to calculate movement of 3D characters, to trigonometry for angles, to eigenvectors for calculating pre-computed spherical harmonics for global illumination lighting. Before I went to university and really taught and learned a lot of math that I use today, I ended up having to teach myself my own math. I remember reverse engineering matrix multiplication because I knew that I needed it to build a 3D game. None of my teachers were able to help me learn that, so I just kind of got a pen and paper and started figuring it out myself. My biggest tip for game development is spend as much time as you possibly can building games. Do it every free second. The more experience you get, the better you'll be. My second tip would be to teach yourself as much math as you can. Math is really useful in a lot of places in game development, but it also just teaches you to think critically and logically, which is also really important. My final tip would be, when you're playing games, pay attention to the things you like, but pay more attention to the things that you don't like. Pay attention to the mistakes that you see game developers make. Because really, game development is a lot of building on what other people have already done. And by knowing the things that you as a player don't like, that gives you insight in how to improve and push the state of the industry forward. Hands down, my favorite game of all time is Shadow of the Colossus. That game showed me that video games can be artwork. They can be immersive. My other favorite games are RPG-heavy games like Fallout and Mass Effect, and I also play a lot of Overwatch 2. Hands down, my favorite first-person shooter. Video game development can be really hard, and a lot of times you get stuck. The way that I unstick myself is, first, I take a step away. I go for a walk, and I don't let myself think about the problem. You'd be surprised how often some background process in your brain will just figure it out. When you sit back down at your desk, the problem will seem easy. If that doesn't work, I usually move on to rubber ducking. The idea is you have a rubber duck on your table and you explain to it what you're trying to do or the problem you're working through. This also works to talk to somebody who maybe doesn't even know what you're doing. There's something magical about walking through your thought process and having to explain it out loud. A lot of times that'll just figure it out. If that doesn't work, then I'll reach out to my colleagues. I'll raise my hand and ask for help. If that doesn't work, then I'll find something else to work on and come back to it later. Pull an ostrich and stick my head in the ground. Games are complicated beasts, and a lot of times there will be problems that seem impossible but are true. I have a good friend who worked on a game, and he had a QA tester tell him that if she plugged and unplugged the Ethernet cable at just the right rate as she sung along to her favorite song from childhood, the game would crash. My friend thought that that was impossible, so he went to her, she showed him, and sure enough, plugging and unplugging the cable at that right speed would crash the game. And that gets to just how difficult it can be to find bugs and fix them. The most important thing is to approach a problem from the assumption there is a problem, something is wrong, I need to figure out what it is. You need to think logically, Make sure that you can reproduce the problem, and then start removing things until the problem goes away. That'll help you identify what part of the game is contributing to the problem. I feel incredibly fortunate and lucky that I get paid to make video games. I started making video games as a hobby because I loved doing it and I loved video games. Follow your heart. Find something that you enjoy doing and keep doing it.